Okay, so we're starting in Numbers. We've kind of moved from the first section. We're now moving into kind of the second section, which is Numbers 10 to 14. We kind of titled it Challenges in the Wilderness. And so, what, just kind of off the cuff, what kind of challenges do you think we might encounter as we begin to study this part of the book?
Trusting God.
Okay, trusting God.
People
You mean
complain.
challenges for them or for us?
Say that again, Sue.
Challenges for them or for us?
Oh, that's a good question. Challenges for us, or is it challenges for God, or is it challenges for
Challenges
both?
for the Israelites.
Okay. All right.
They might complain like they did when they were first wandering around about food and drink and all that stuff.
Yep. 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 So in some ways we might have a echo of what we've already experienced in that section before they camped out at Mount Sinai for a bit. So as we kind of think about this section, our kind of key themes are, departure from Sinai. We'll see complaints from the people, spies sent to Canaan, and Israel's rebellion. And as we think about this stuff, I think the takeaways as we move into this second movement of Numbers, is it's chunked into literary units with 7 stories of testing and rebellion. And in some ways, we might, focus our attention on, the grumping, the groaning, and the rebellion. But I think one of the things we have to remember that again and again, God allows Israel to experience their consequences for their actions, but remains with them and is faithful with a plan to redeem them. Also, as I mentioned, and I continue to mention, anytime we're, reading the New Testament, anytime we're reading through the Old Testament here, we want to look through echoes or look for echoes, those hyperlinks that kind of take us back into Genesis and into the garden in those areas. So as we look at Numbers 13, hopefully we'll see echoes of Genesis 3. And then also in this section, the large section that probably a lot of us are familiar with, is the story of the 12 spies. And because of Israel's reaction to the spies, they are permitted to continue to wander in the desert rather than go into the promised land. So chapter 10, let's look at chapter 10 for a minute. So Israel's getting ready to leave Sinai. And so we have the section, and it happened in the second year, in the second month, on the 20th of the month, the cloud was lifted from the tabernacle of the testimony, and the Israelites set out for their journey from the desert of Sinai, and the cloud dwelled in the desert of Paran. They set out for the first time on the command of Yahweh in the hands of Moses. So if you kind of direct your attention to the map here, this is where they had been camped out, Mount Sinai, and they're going to wander along here and eventually end up in Kadesh. Okay. So that's kind of the route that they're going to take. So it's just kind of a straight route. And if you look at it, it puts them in close proximity of the promised land up there in the north. So as we do that, and you listen to this piece of scripture, do you hear any echoes? Any anything that you would anticipate happening? Any echoes?
Well, like when Moses was leading them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So we're getting teed up for a movement just like the beginning of Exodus. You know, so they go out through the Red Sea, back up in here, and then they come wandering down. So we could take this here and kind of go from here to here. So it's like we're starting the second leg of the journey. Okay. And with that second leg, we anticipate those things that you had already talked about, grumping and grousing.
Yeah, just eat them then.
Okay. So it says if we look at Israel leaves Sinai, we look at Numbers 10. And so they set out from the mountain of Yahweh, a journey of 3 days, with the ark of the covenant of Yahweh setting out ahead of them. 3 days journey to a search out of a resting place for them. And the cloud of Yahweh was over them by day when they set out from the camp. And whenever the ark was setting out, Moses would say, "Rise up, Yahweh. May your enemies be scattered. May the ones that hate you flee from your presence." And when it rested, he would say, "Return, Yahweh, to the countless thousands of Israel." So if you're thinking, if you look at that piece of scripture, what kind of goes through your mind as you hear it?
They weren't well liked or popular.
Okay, what makes you say that?
Well, if you're asking for your enemies to be spread out and done away so that they're not as strong, you
Okay.
must fear that they're going to be attacking you.
Okay.
That God is, represented by the ark. And so that is sort of like paving the way for the Israelites to go to a certain place.
Okay.
Like God is leading them.
Okay. Yeah, so if we kind of look at that, it's kind of, over here, this is kind of how the camp was set up, if you remember. In the center was where the little smoky thing is. That's the ark. Around it is the camp of priests, and then around that is the camps of the tribes. And so in that center, this is where God would go. And then when Moses kind of summons God, the presence of Yahweh moves out and kind of moves in front of the people, and they follow that cloud. And then when they camp, that the presence of Yahweh then goes back into the ark. So we have this kind of circular kind of thing happening. As you think about that, any thoughts that you have?
Well, looking at your picture, I immediately thought that the cloud it could be representative of the smoke in the camp.
Okay. Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. So in the camp, when you have excuse me, at the altar, it's constantly filled with smoke rising up, almost kind of making a cloud, just like the kind that they follow there. Yeah, that's good.
It's a visible sign that God is present.
A visible sign that God is present. Okay. Any other kind of echoes that you can see?
Mm,
Kind of going back the other direction. It's, did we ever hear the scripture, the Spirit of God hovered?
Over the vast void, back to Genesis.
Right, back to Genesis. So we have some echoes of Genesis here. Now, as we also look at this, are there any kind of like maybe hyperlinks to things that happen after this? I mean, if you kind of look at this, you know, in some ways, does it remind you of the movement of the Holy Spirit?
Mm,
Kind of like at Jesus's baptism.
Yeah, it's baptism. You have the cloud there, you know, so so it's a way that we can kind of visually be reminded of the presence of Yahweh. Now, if you were an Israelite, if you were a Hebrew, then how and you were part of this group, how would this make you feel?
I would think comforted that God is present.
Okay,
would
it's
Me too.
okay. How many of us would like physical reminders, would like to have a cloud there that reminds us that God is present? Anybody?
mm,
Yeah, real.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you're a part of something that's greater than you.
Yep. Yep. So as they set off, this is kind of what happens. You know, the presence of Yahweh it goes before them when they're walking, and you know, settles in the center of them when they're there. So, you know, God, they're all always centered around and being led by God. So kind of gives us the idea, the reminder, you know, in some ways, this is the way we need to live our lives. You know, God needs to be out ahead, leading us, and also needs to be, you know, our lives need to be centered upon God. All right, so they get ready, and here they go. They're off and on their way. Okay, now that's in chapter 10. And what happens in chapters 11 and 12? Now remember,
Complaints?
there are complaints. Now remember, here we are. We're seeing the presence of God. You know, it's not like, you know, you're wandering around and you don't see God's presence here, but it doesn't take long for them to start to complain. Okay. And so let's look at maybe some of their complaints. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, that, you know, if we look at all of these narratives, you know, throughout Numbers, it's kind of riddled with a lot of complaining. Okay. And in fact, if you look at them, there's 7 different narratives about Israel's rebellion. Okay. And if you look at them and you kind of go from chapter 11 down to chapter 21, where you see these little colored bars, you know, as you move along, as we go along, the grumbling ramps up in intensity. Okay, so 11:1, we have a little bit of grumbling, and then Miriam and Aaron a little bit of grumbling, then the community. By the time we get to the end here, you know, the people are really you know, on Moses' back. And so if you look at this, you know, this part of the book is riddled with lots of angry, grumpy people. But if we look at each one, you know, together, they have a composite about you know, the grumpiness here. But if we look at them individually, each starts with a different reason. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go through the book. Now, today, we're going to focus just on the first 3 of them. You know, people complained about hardships. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses, and then the community raised voice and grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The other thing we have to think about is, as I mentioned before, we're looking at bookends. And so, we have Genesis and Deuteronomy that are paired. We have Exodus and Numbers that are paired, and Leviticus is in the middle. So if we kind of look at the pairings there, we have rebellion in the book of Exodus, and now we have rebellion in the book of Numbers. And if you compare them, the intensity grows across that way as well. So we have, if you look at Exodus, we have some grumblings, and you compare them to the ones in Numbers. The ones in Numbers have increased intensity. So increased gravity along with them. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at these three here. And as I mentioned already, they're designed to correspond to the middle portion of Exodus as they journeyed through the desert, and the stories get intensified and inverted. All right. And so if we look at the structure of these rebellions, they're also paired. Okay, so we have fire in the camp and fiery snakes here. Manna, and Moses complained against God. Water and Moses, rebellion against God. Rebellion against Moses. Rebellion against Aaron. And the rebellion against Exodus. Now, as you look at that structure, what comes to mind?
Exile and Exodus, like that pattern.
Okay. All right. What about as we think about structure, have we talked about this type of structure before?
Well, the thing you were just saying about the 5 books.
Okay, yep. So we have the 5 books. So we have we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So we have that structure, and they are paired. And then what did we learn about the structure when we talked about the Torah together? Do you remember? They were all centered around or focused on the center. Focused on the center. So, when you think about the book of the Torah,
Leviticus.
you have the book of Leviticus, and right in the center of the book of Leviticus is, God dwelling with the people. And so all of that structure of Torah is designed to be organized around that main theme. And so if we look at this structure, we know that, okay, we got all of these rebellions that are happening, and, little squabbles here, little squabbles there. But if we kind of look at them, what are they all centered on? We look at the central or the centerpiece here, which is chapters 13 and 14, which is the rebellion against Exodus. And so if you think about this idea of rebellion against Exodus, what do you think that's all about? What does that mean?
It's the people rebelling against going back to God.
Okay, so we have to think about what is this idea of Exodus, and that really becomes central for the foundation of the Hebrew people. Also becomes foundational for us as Christians. And so the whole idea of Exodus is the movement of a people from slavery into freedom. Okay. And so if we think about the Exodus, you had the people that were enslaved in Egypt. Okay. And God freed them and led them out into freedom. But
Is it just not happening fast enough for them? Is that what their rebellion was like? That they had said, back in Exodus that they were so, kind of sorry they were free. At least they had food and whatever. So what is it? Were they just frustrated that it was taking them so long?
Uh,
Yeah, the, I
I,
gotta
I,
take.
I think some of it was that, it took them,
Batteries.
a while. But what other things can you come up with?
Well, early in chapter 11, they say it's one of the first complaints was about food, that in Egypt they
Yeah.
had fruits and vegetables, but in the desert, all they have is manna constantly.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, some of that was, what does freedom entail?
Responsibility.
Okay, yeah, responsibility and trust.
Some sacrifices, maybe?
Okay, yeah, some sacrifices. Sometimes, if we're going to have freedom, we may not completely understand what that means. We may not, completely see. I mean, you think about the Israelites, they leave something that was at least structured and known and go out into the unknown. And what happens when we go out into the unknown?
Scary.
It's scary.
Mhm.
And sometimes with that scariness, we have this idea that we need to, fill in stories. And so, if we get the central thing is this rebellion against Exodus, rebellion against freedom. Now, if we think about that, this is kind of, for the Hebrew people, do we see this as Christians?
Yeah, because we know, Jesus will come again, but we don't trust in that. And we
Okay, so
complain. We get
Uh,
impatient, like Nancy was saying, it's not happening fast enough. And,
okay. Well, so I think, okay, in some ways you can look at it and you can do this kind of looking at it from the lens of Christ's second coming. But if we look at it maybe not from that lens, but a different lens, and the lens of Jesus coming, the whole idea of Jesus coming, the whole idea of the cross and the resurrection is one of exodus from sin into freedom.
Right.
And what is our
And-
human condition?
Again, it's like the rebellion against the Exodus is like the rebellion of Jesus' ministry on earth.
Or yeah, it's the
People
rebellion.
that didn't accept it.
Well, it's not even, sometimes it's not even just the people that don't accept it. It speaks in some ways, to a culture, a group of people, as well as individuals, and even individuals that follow Christ. I mean, what did Paul say about sin? I know the things that I should do, but the things I should do, I don't do, and the things that I don't do, I should do. And so what is that all about? That's about that rebellion that's we see. Now, if we think about that same idea, we can take it all the way back to the garden. What happened in the garden? Well, there was rebellion against the freedom that God had offered. So, as we kind of look at these rebellions that are going on, and we look at the structure of it, the writer is really, having us focus and draw our attention to this rebellion that is against the Exodus, something that was seen in Genesis, something that's seen here, and something that continues to be seen in us today. Any other thoughts or comments about that?
I was being critical of something you were saying earlier about the center, and it reminded me of something I had seen on the computer and saved. Just off topic for a few seconds, but it said some facts about Psalm 118. It says Psalm 118 is the middle chapter of the entire Bible. The Psalm 117 before it is the shortest chapter of the Bible, but Psalm 119 after it is the longest chapter in the Bible. It has 594 chapters in the Bible before Psalm 118, and it also has 594 chapters after Psalm 118. If you add up all the chapters of except for Psalm 118, you get a total of 1188 chapters. Psalm 118 verse 8 is the actual very center verse of the entire Bible, and it reads, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man."
Huh, isn't that
I just-
something like rebellion against the Exodus?
I just thought that was interesting when you were talking about the center and the five
Yeah.
books. And
Yeah, and read that. Do you still have that, Mark? Mark, read that once again for us.
it says the Psalm 118 is the middle
Right.
chapter of the entire
Right.
Bible.
Read the middle. That's what I'm asking you to do.
That
Oh, that
last,
verse in the
that
middle.
last thing.
Yeah.
The 118 chapter or verse 8, it is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man.
Better to take refuge in the Lord than to take refuge in the man,
Than to trust in man.
and
right?
trust in man. Huh? Does that have something to say about here? Does that have
Yeah.
something to say about life? Yeah. So anytime you're thinking about, the state, it's a good idea to look at the structure, look at the middle, because it usually has something pretty significant to say. So let's keep that in mind as we move on. The central idea here is rebellion against Exodus. So it's in some ways our rebellion against God, and part of it is our human wiring. And so what do we gain from this? Okay. So every single story ramps up in intensity. And you finish this section of the book feeling pretty disheartened. We almost might feel a little bit superior. Like, okay, they saw the cloud, they saw God, and they're just ill-informed people, and I would never act like this. We say to ourselves as we read. But the moment you start to think that you can never behave like these Israelites, the stories work this magic. It's kind of lured you in, because Numbers 11 through 21 hold the mirror up to the one who reads them. Okay, the whole idea of this wilderness rebellion is almost like a caricature. If you go to one of those parks or the beach or something, you have those people sitting there, and they make caricatures of you, drawing you.
Mhm.
This is that caricature. This is kind of what we look like. So what happens is the whole idea of Numbers is to pull us in, and it's to highlight something about our human hearts and our human minds, and how fickle we are, how short-sighted we are. And at the end, how gracious and merciful God is. All right. So we kind of go through those complaint chapters a little bit, and we move along. And so now we get to the spies and the complaints. And so this is somewhat familiar to us if we think about anything. But let's go through it. So if we go Numbers 13, 1 through 15, and Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Send for yourself men and let them explore the land of Canaan, which I am about to give to the Israelites. From each tribe of his fathers send one man, everyone a leader among them. So Moses sent them from the desert of Paran on the command of Yahweh. All of the men were leaders of the Israelites, and these are their names. From the tribe of Reuben, Shumawa, son of Zechor. From the tribe of Simeon, Shapheth, son of Hori. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, son of Jenuphtheu. From the tribe of Issachar, Egal, son of Joseph. The tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, son of Nun. From the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, son of Raphu. From the tribe of Zebulun, Gadil, son of Zodi. And from the tribe of Joseph, from the tribe of Manasseh, Gadi, son of Susi. From the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gemal. And from the tribe of Asher, Sethur, son of Michael. And from the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, son of Fosi. From the tribe of Gad, Guel, son of Maki. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent to explore the land. And Moses called Hoshea, son of Nun, Joshua. All right, so what's going to happen here? What's happening?
Well, these leaders are going to go and check out, spy, as you will, on the land of Canaan
Okay.
to see what it was all about. But didn't they have any insight what the people were like there in Canaan before they even went out? Did they not have any insight at all?
No insight. Remember, where had they been for hundreds of years?
Egypt.
They've been in
Yeah,
Egypt.
Who's living in Canaan at this point?
What's that, Nance?
Who's living in Canaan at this point? Anyone?
Canaanites.
Canaanites.
Yeah.
Duh. I was in Sunday school that day. Yeah, okay.
But we talked about, but somewhere back, we talked a little bit about foreigners among them.
Well, there were foreigners in the desert. Okay, so if you think about, here they are, they're in the desert. Okay. Now they've been in Egypt for hundreds of years, so they know nothing about anything other than Egypt.
Mhm.
Okay. They come into the desert, and as they wander around the desert, there are other tribes of people that live in the desert. The nomads live there.
Okay.
Okay, so they know about them. Now, do they talk to nomads? I don't know. They might have known a little bit, but certainly not enough. And it's not like you can pull out a geography book or, some kind of information about what's going on there.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
I just thought they would have had some information already, but okay.
No, not really.
Okay.
Not a whole lot. And so we have one person from each tribe, and who is going? Is it just any old person?
No.
Okay.
The leaders.
Okay, these are leaders. These are representatives. And based on our Bible reading, who are the standouts?
Well, Joshua.
Okay, so here's Hoshea right here, son of Nun, and he's called Joshua.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? If you've read this story before, that there were 12 spies. If I asked you, okay, name 6 of the spies, you couldn't name any except for Joshua and Caleb. And so
Yeah.
we have Joshua, okay, son of Nun. Okay, and he comes from the tribe of Ephraim. And actually, this person, Joshua, is half Israelite and half from Esau. So He's kind of a mixed person. And then we have, where's the other one? Caleb. Okay, Caleb. What tribe is Caleb from?
Judah.
Judah. What do we know about Judah?
It was one of the favored ones.
One of the
Yeah,
favorite
the
ones? Isn't something special supposed to come from the line of Judah?
Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus. All right, so we have these spies that are being sent out. So these are the leaders.
Spy is such a harsh word though, because not only are they going to check out the people who live there, but it says the land and see what the land is like and the vegetation and
Right. Yeah. So they're
Well,
they're really not just spies. They're kind of
Surveyors.
surveyors. Yeah. And so yeah, that's an excellent word, Herman. They're on reconnaissance. Okay. And so here they are at this place called Kadesh, and they're going to go up north into the land of Canaan. All right. And so they've been sent out from Kadesh. Now, it's interesting when you look at this, and they do this a lot in Hebrew. The same three Hebrew letters for Kadesh are used for Kadosh, which means holy. So, the writer is trying to, say that the spies are being sent out from the holy place. Okay. And so here they go. They're getting ready to go from Kadesh up into Canaan. All right. And so they go up, they do their reconnaissance, and they come back. And so in
40
Numbers,
40 days later.
yep. And so they come back. They return from exploring the land at the end of 40 days. 40 days. Any significance of 40 days?
Yeah, the flood.
Okay,
Were
we
you just in
the
the
fo-
desert?
okay, the wander in the desert,
No, Jesus was in the desert for 40
Yep.
days.
and Jesus was in the desert for 40 days.
The towns.
Say that again? Okay, so what do we typically, is there any kind of significance to the 40 days?
I mean, it keeps coming up over and over again, but
Sure, it keeps coming up over and over again. And if something keeps coming up over and over and over again, what's that typically mean?
it's
It's
important.
Yep. So if we think about 40 days, it's a symbolic number. Symbolic for testing, or the passage of time in waiting for the fulfillment of God's word. Okay. So they go for 40 days, and they came back to Moses and Aaron and to the entire community of the Israelites in the desert of Paran at Kadesh, coming back into the holy place. They brought back word to them and to all the community, and they showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, "We came to the land that you sent us, and it's flowing with milk and honey. This is its fruit. Yet the people who are inhabiting it are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of the Anakites there. The Amalekites are living in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites are living in the hill country. And the Canaanites are living at the sea and on the banks of the Jordan." All right. So if we stop there, and you're one of the Israelites, what do you hear?
There's
It's
already
tough
people there.
In there.
All right, that there's people there.
They're well organized and well defended.
Okay, well organized, well defended. So everybody's focus goes on the people and the obstacles, right?
Right.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, and I'm sure they did as well. And Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, surely let us go up and let us take possession of it, because we surely will be able to prevail over it. So, how many people went up?
Well,
12. Okay, but we got everybody there and they're grumbling, and we have one person who speaks up. And the men who went with him said, we're not able to go up to the people because they are stronger than us. And they presented the report of the land that they had explored to the Israelites, saying, the land that we went through to explore is a land that eats its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in its midst are men of great size. There we saw the Nephilim, the descendants of Anak, came from the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so were we in their eyes. All right, so as we look at that little section there, what do you think?
well, they're scared because these people are a larger people than them physically.
Okay. Okay,
So that intimidates them right there.
all right.
Was there a reason God was taking them to Canaan, where there were already people living there, and telling them that that's where they were going to, he was sending them to? That was his gift to them, or whatever. There was
Promised
nowhere
land.
else.
Well, why Canaan?
That's what yeah, why Canaan? If there were people there already, it was inhabited already.
Because it's a fertile piece of ground. It's probably fertile in there. You know,
Well, I think the other thing you need to think about is, what is happening here, or what's trying to happen here. This is the fulfillment of a promise that God made long time ago to Abraham. I mean, if you remember, Abraham was in this land. Abraham wandered through this land. And it was while Abraham was wandering through the land that God had promised it to him.
yeah.
And so what
And that was pre-Canaanites, right?
well,
You're
no,
saying that was pre-Canaanite times.
no, what I'm saying is that there were people that lived in the land when Abraham was there.
Okay.
Okay. But God had promised the land to Abraham. Said, you're going to have this land and you're going to have descendants. Now, we're thinking about this, and what you're saying is, wow, these people, how do they describe them? They describe them as what? Very, very large, because we look like grasshoppers. So we look very small compared to them.
Uh-huh.
Is that really true?
No,
It might have been.
Yeah.
no, they
Okay.
said that they were gonna make up a story. They had to make up a story to discourage the people from trying to move in there because we couldn't take it over.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, it's that, but we just talked about Abraham, right?
Mhm.
Did Abraham wander through there?
Yes.
He said he did,
What-
yeah.
I didn't say he did. The Bible says he said he did. And so in those stories with Abraham, did we ever hear that he was like a grasshopper compared to the inhabitants of the land.
Weren't there giants at some point?
That was back in Genesis.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Genesis. So that my point is that, we know a little bit about the land from the time of Abraham. And at the time of Abraham, when God had promised them land, okay, his issue wasn't so much land at the time. His issue really was more around what? Descendants. Your descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky or the sand on the seashore, and he didn't have anybody. So his focus was on that. But he wandered around the land, and never once do we hear really about, giants that lived in the land. And so, if that's kind of not the case, but we have it here, okay, as Sue says, okay, maybe the 12 spies made up a story to try to dissuade them. But how does our minds work?
Exaggerations.
Okay, in exaggerations. Because when I read that first section to you, and it the land flowing with milk and honey, and here is its fruits. And then I read the second half, but there are people who are inhabiting it are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Where does our mind go? It goes to the obstacles rather than the fruit.
And the fear of how we're
And-
going to
Right.
get
And that
past that.
that leads to fear. It
Well.
leads to fear. Does that sound like human nature?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like human nature. And so, as we kind of look at this and we kind of think about what's going on here, we kind of move on. And so we have the report. All right. So the spies come back, they make the report, and the report was not just to Moses. It wasn't just a Moses decision. This was a community decision. So what happens next? So we're now in Numbers 14. Then all the community lifted up their voices, and the people wept during that night. And all the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and all the community said to them, "If only we had died in the land of Egypt or in this desert. Why did Yahweh bring us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little children will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt?" They said to each other, "Let's appoint a leader, and we will return to Egypt." What do you think about that?
Terrible.
Going to be a
Terrible.
mutiny.
All right. Well, so I want you to keep there. I'm gonna rapid fire back here. Go back to here. The presence of Yahweh. What have they forgotten?
His presence.
Yeah, they've
Presence.
forgotten his presence that's there. It's even in the midst as he stands there. We have that happening. And so as we look at this and we hear this, what else do we kind of think about?
Well, I think you got one or two of them trying to step up and become leaders,
Okay.
legitimately, Caleb and whatnot, by suggestion that they go forward,
Mm-hmm.
not back.
Do we hear any echoes of maybe something that happened before?
Oh.
They were like that in Egypt. They didn't really embrace Moses when
Okay.
he was going to
Okay,
lead
there you
them
go.
out.
All right. Is there maybe a sister story that we heard in Exodus?
You talking about the parting of the Red Sea?
No, I'm talking about the golden calf.
Mm,
Oh, they
What-
forgot about God then too.
Oh, yeah, they forgot about God. So Moses went up on the mountain and Moses was camped out on the mountain for a while. They forgot about Moses. They forgot about God. Thought that they were being left alone. So they grumbled, but they didn't grumble against Aaron. They actually got Aaron to help them to fashion a golden calf. Go ahead, Chris. Look like you're going to say something.
Well, but all that time, even with the golden calf, and even when these spies came back and gave this report, wasn't the cloud of God still there?
Well,
Or was
I
was there
would-
only a cloud when he moved?
there was only a cloud when he moved, when they were marching. When they were not
Okay.
marching,
But-
the tabernacle would be in the center of the camp.
In the center, so, okay. And they could all see it, right? Or was it so big that they couldn't
See
see.
what?
see the tabernacle?
Well, you could see it. I mean, it was in the middle.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know why
So-
they,
So in some ways, as we think about this section of Numbers here and people complaining, our minds will also go back to the golden calf. Okay. And then it says Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the community of Israelites. Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephthah from the explorers of the land tore their garments. And they said to all the community of Israelites, the land that we went through to explore is an exceptionally good land. If Yahweh delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and he will give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, and you will not fear the people of the land, because they will be our food. Their protection has been turned from them. Yahweh is with us. You should not fear them. And all the community said to stone them with stones. But the glory of Yahweh appeared in the tent of the assembly among the Israelites. Mark, what was that verse you read for us from Psalms again?
119.
Oh, I don't
One eight-
have it open. I gotta find it.
Yeah,
It's
give me-
118:8.
118:8.
Yeah, I've circled it in my Bible.
Those who trust in the Lord, or I should have wrote it down.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Basically trust God, not man.
Right.
Psalms.
It's better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man.
What is he saying here? That would-
God's with us, then we should just go, and the people who live there is going to be basically working
Right.
for us.
So this is the embodiment of what you're reading in Psalm 119. Now, what did I say that the center part of the grumblings was rebellion against the Exodus. Rebellion
Right.
against Exodus. And in some ways, this, if you think about the Exodus, this is the second part. The Exodus is what, we're kind of moving. And so as we think about this, the description, where did the thing go? The description of this. And they told him, we came to the land that you sent us, and it's flowing with milk and honey. This is its fruit. So what, as we think about those words, where does our mind go to?
Mm.
I want to say the garden, the fruit.
There you go. It goes to the garden. So in some ways, as you know, they're looking at this and they're talking about this as it being exceptionally good land. You know, what God is saying is that, you know, this land, the promised land, is like the new Eden. So, you know, you move from the desert and to this new Eden. But what are they doing? They're
Resisting.
resisting and rebelling against the Exodus.
Oh my gosh. And this is like, I'm getting deja vu, I think. The next bit is Moses pleading, don't punish the people. And this is
Like
like the
right there?
same thing. Yeah, like that happened in Exodus. Like I'm remembering
Yeah,
this exact thing where Moses is like, no, 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 no.
yeah,
If you do that, then the Egyptians are gonna, hear it.
yeah.
And even after
And-
Joshua and Caleb told them that God's going to get them through it,
Yeah,
they
Yeah.
they don't listen at all. They just,
so God is inviting them into the promised land, into this new Eden. It is there, but all they can see are obstacles. And the obstacles have played in their mind and have become so big that they're like giants.
It's weird when, about 10 minutes ago we started reading this section. It just occurred to me how, when the angel approaches Mary and announces what she's been chosen to do, and she's like shocked and says, how can this be? But she doesn't resist it. But,
Mhm.
in the way that the people here are resisting it.
Yeah,
And because she accepts it and she follows God, she is graced with what happens. But here it's just like, the
Well-
people are fighting and fighting and fighting.
And these people are going to be graced as well, but not graced in a good way.
118:8. It's better to take refuge in the Lord than to put confidence in mortals.
There we go. And so, you know, there Moses and Aaron and Caleb and Joshua were pleading with the people. And then it goes on, the people complain, and Yahweh said to Moses, how long until this people will despise me, and how long until they will not believe in me and in all the signs that I have done in their midst? I will strike them with disease and I will dispossess them. I will make you into a greater and stronger nation than them. And Moses said to Yahweh, then the Egyptians will hear that you brought up this people from their midst in your power, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They heard that you, Yahweh, are in the midst of this people, that you are seen before them by day and in the column of fire at night. But if you destroy this people all at once, the nations that will have heard your message will say, Yahweh was unable to bring this people into the land that he swore by an oath, and he slaughtered them in the desert. But now please let the power of my Lord be great, just as you spoke. Yahweh is slow to anger and great of loyal love, forgiving sin and rebellion, but surely he leaves nothing unpunished, visiting the sin of the fathers on the sons to the third and fourth generations. And so as Deb was saying, you should have a big sense of deja vu here, because this is exactly what happened in the Exodus story at the end of the golden calf. God was ticked off. God was going to destroy them, but Moses interceded for them. And almost exactly the same argument that, you know, if you destroy the people, it's going to have a negative impact on your reputation as a powerful God.
In your plan.
Up and the plan. Yep, absolutely. And
And then
so
you can hear God's eyes roll. Oh,
and how often do God's eyes roll with us as well?
Yeah, I don't think it ever stops.
Yeah.
So, and so the God has grace and God has mercy. And, what does he do? He gives the people what they want.
Yeah.
They don't want to go into the promised land. Well, then you won't go into the promised land. And so what do?
They
They
wandered
They
40 years.
wander
But
in
they
the
don't, he
desert.
doesn't send them back to Egypt either, so they just,
40 more years.
Yep. So they
Wander.
wander in the desert for 40 years. And just as we talked about 40 before, it's a time of preparation, a time until God's coming. So go ahead.
So all those people that left Egypt, none of them got into the promised land.
Except for
Caleb.
Caleb and Joshua.
Joshua. So, and so it was like those that went into the promised land, was that like the 5th generation then? After they came out of Egypt?
It'll be the 2nd generation.
Well, go back a slide, because it said something there about the 3rd and 4th generation.
Oh, yeah, that's a slow to anger, forgiving sin and rebellion, but surely he's nothing unpunished, visiting the sin of the fathers on the sons to the 3rd and 4th generations. That's just kind of how sin works. But no, it's it's the 2nd generation. So the 1st generation, if you will, is the first 40 years. The 2nd generation is the second 40 years.
Okay.
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 So as we kind of looked at this, we saw that, we have challenges, we have grumbling versus gratitude, we have issues with trust. And so, we talked a lot about the challenges that the Israelites faced after leaving Sinai. Now, as you think about those challenges, were they all man-made challenges, or were they God-made challenges? Probably not a good way of asking that question.
Yeah, because I was going to say,
I guess what I'm asking is, they saw challenges. Okay. There are challenges of food. There's challenges of water. There's challenges of, safety and all that kind of stuff. But do we sometimes make those challenges bigger than they really are?
Yeah, it was like a God is saying, don't you trust me yet?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And so, we now need to kind of bring that, forward into the 21st century, because remember, I said that early on that when we're looking at the Israelites, we're looking at a caricature of ourselves. And so, the question then becomes, how do we respond to challenges in our own lives, in our own spiritual journeys? Sometimes do we have challenges trusting God, and sometimes are those challenges really made bigger in our heads than they really are? Other thing, grumbling versus gratitude. Okay, if we look, throughout Exodus, in the wandering in the desert, we look in Numbers, the wandering the desert, all grumbling. Okay. And what does grumbling do?
Nothing.
Well, it does something.
Well,
Well, it turns off the people that you're supposed to have positive relationships with.
Okay, turns off people you're supposed to have positive relationships with. What's
They are the seeds of discontent.
the seeds of discontent. When we grumble, what's our focus on?
Us.
Us. When we have gratitude, what's our focus on?
God.
God. God. So in some ways, you know, as we think about this, the grumbling that's going on, you know, the focus was more on themselves, more on their needs, rather than on their focus being on God and what God has done for them and what God would continue to do for them. So in some ways, it's like they really couldn't see, you know, that cloud that went before them. They were kind of immune to that. And so, you know, if we can shift our focus, you know, from our needs to God, gratitude would overcome the grumbling. So how often are we grumblers versus people who are people of gratitude? And then the last thing is, you know, we touched on this, you know, as they were getting ready to go into the promised land, the new Eden. Okay. This is something that God had promised eons ago. Okay. And here it is. You know, they were like a 2-day trip away from being in the promised land. But because they said no, they wandered for another 40 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, you know, what did that report of the spies do? What did Israel's reaction do? Cause them to wander, actually caused an entire generation not to see or experience God's plan.
It's
And
God
so-
saying, I'm going to turn this car right back around.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
Stop complaining.
Exactly. So, you know, as we think about this section of Numbers, remember, we all have challenges. Are we going to grumble about them? Are we going to be more gracious? And are we going to trust? Any other thoughts or comments? Our next week, we're going to be in Numbers 15 to 19, laws, rebellion, and atonement. But any aha moments or anything you want to put forward before we end our time together?
What was, refresh my memory, what was the punishment after when Moses came back down from the mountain and because they built the golden lamb? What was their punishment for that?
Golden camp.
There were people that were destroyed.
Okay. All right. Because I never knew till we start studying all this that the 40 years was when they were that close to entering the promised land.
Yeah, they were just, you know, 3 days journey away.
So how much time was it between when they left Egypt and they were like 2 days away from entering the promised land? How much time passed there? Do you know, Jeff?
That was the first 40 years, right?
Yeah.
That was the first what?
40 years.
40 years from Egypt to the promised land, and then another 40 for punishment.
So it was 80 years before they got into that land then?
Yes.
Wow.
So how old was Joshua and Caleb? You said they're the only two that made
I
it.
have no idea.
That'd
They
be
must
pretty
have been
old.
infants when they left Egypt.
Yeah, they were pretty old, but you know.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're probably just older when they went in, but yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yep. All right.